Hey there, viewers! Do you remember way back when we did that video on Halo 3 ODST, which I called the Bungie Ashcan Project, made to vaguely sustain interest in the series between the development of Halo 3 and Halo Reach, and also to hand out all the DLC maps for Halo 3 in a nice convenient package? Yeah, the game didn't get a lot of time or money sunk into it, and it was also pretty boring, especially since the game was mostly chased the flashback of super dull characters to the point that the main character was actually named Rookie, introduced by falling asleep on the job. Yeah, those were some good times. Well, it's nice to see that 343 Industries is continuing this tradition with Halo Wars 2, the baffling game announced in 2017 to sequelize a game made in 2009 by a one-shot developer who honestly didn't do that good of a job. Yeah, I was weirded out by the decision since the original Halo Wars and its remaster were basically baby's first strategy game with not a lot of challenge or thought put into it, so let's see if 343 can manage to make a comeback on this third string IP. The game begins with the Spirit of Fire from the first Halo Wars doing the Halo 4 thing and being found drifting in space for an undetermined period of time. Apparently it was like 29 years or something of not being found, and by then Serena, the AI from the last game and the best character in the Halo franchise, wakes the ship up with the news that she has been decommissioned and not replaced by another since the game hasn't been able to dock anywhere. Sad news because Serena was the best character ever and her sarcastic humor overshadowed the never serious Cortana. Now, since this Halo series has never been big on keeping a solid timeline over its games, I'm just going to tell you that unlike the first game that took place before Halo Reach, this game is now taking place in between Halo 5 and Halo 6. What a great setting to start in. Anywho, the ship wakes up next to the Ark, that place that was the central firing mechanism for all the Halo rings from the first trilogy. Good, let's keep getting you up to speed. Cutter sends an away team to look for an established human colony on the Ark and hopefully get back in contact with base after all this time. Since this game isn't all that clever, it's obvious that the mission didn't turn out all that well. The humans were all murdered and the Ark has been taken over. For the details, the Spirit of Fire has picked up Isabel, the AI for the human colony, who establishes the new threat of this game by hitting the player over the head with a sledgehammer and jamming all the exposition down their throat all at once. During the Age of the Covenant that ended in Halo 5, there was a man named Atriox, who defied the tenets of the Covenant religion and was marked for death. But unlike the Arbiter, who had been resigned to his fate and beat it by sheer dumb luck, Atriox broke free from his captors, killed all of his assassins sent after him, and became a martyr leader for a new faction of Covenant, the Banished, who is made up of others who have defied the Covenant along with some mercenaries and other weirdos. So, do you remember the Covenant itself being totally crushed and wiped out from the Halo storyline in Halo 5? Well, guess what? There was apparently another faction of Covenant that was exactly as big and strong and dangerous as the Covenant to replace them with in the wings. Better luck next time. So after that exposition pile-up, the game gets kickstarted right up the jacksie with the stupidest military move I have ever seen after Cutter had been told that Atriox has survived literally the entire Covenant coming down on top of his head.
Where you see half a crew, Isabel, I see family, courage, and 1,000 heroes who swore to fight their way through hell before they'd ever turn their backs and run. And where you see one old ship, I see home. And that is always worth fighting for. Hoorah! If we don't stop Atriox now, we leave the galaxy at the mercy of a monster. So no, Isabel, we won't be running anywhere today.
Sir, yes, sir.
Now that is definitely a leader I can get behind. To push off the edge of a cliff. An entire alien regime wasn't able to kill this guy, and Cutter thinks his rinky-dink old-ass ship can do the job. Kind of an odd way to set up a suicide pact, but whatever. Let's just get rolling on to the Ark. The rest of the game isn't all that interesting. In typical Call of Duty games industry fashion, the rest of the story is Cutter Ship doing some vague anti-banish things that will in some way help them to take down the entire regime. There's some shields that need taking down, some guys to murder, and a super weapon to grab, all the usual stuff. Throughout all of that, we'll be getting to play around with the totally revamped strategy game engine that we were promised with the developer change from Ensemble to Creative Assembly, a respected strategy game maker. And with the talk about this game being made by the creme de la creme of the strat game sector, it is really odd how much effort Creative and 343 spent in remaking the original system from Halo Wars that was broken in half just by piling up Scorpion tanks. To be fair to the dynamic duo, they did put some more thought into this game that was supposed to work, and instead of Scorpion-fueled dominance, the game is more of a rock-paper-scissors gambit with additional features. The units are separated into 3 groups: infantry, vehicles, and aircraft, and each type has an advantage and disadvantage against one of the others, and that fuels the core mechanics and gives us different types of units, although not that much in the variety department. You'll get about 3 types of marines, 2 types of planes, and 4 types of vehicles in all levels. Throughout the game, there's a bit more, like the snipers will come out for sniper-based missions and other ones along the way. The base building and management functions almost exactly like the original game. You build supply pads and unit generators that gives you the ability to wage war across the map, and they are very well designed maps, almost expert level. Not too big and not too small. You can get around in an intuitive manner, but not too fast to reduce the challenge to Zippo. The AI of the enemies has also been improved to the point that they can actually put up a coherent battle instead of just clustering all in one place or running around at random. It seems like their leadership has some actual planning skills this time, and periodic invasions are just something you're going to have to deal with when the game decides to dabble in capture the flag doohickery. Overall, it's a greatly made, expert-built strategy system that gives you some customization and some challenge without overbalancing one side, and since that's one of the ultimate goals of any strategy game, seeing Creative Assembly manage to accurately balance their game is an achievement worthy of note. There's not really much else to talk about beyond that. The objectives are simple to understand, there's no passive hierarchy building mechanics or leadership trees you need to worry about, no ridiculous metagame or convoluted tactics unless you get into the multiplayer, but honestly, why would you? I can't imagine there's a huge online base for this of all games. The problem is that while this game is well designed on its mechanics and layout for being a strategy game, there's not a lot to talk about as a game itself. It functions well and is balanced is all well and good, but this game is also trying to have a campaign storyline unto itself, and to describe it as floundering would be pretty close. A praise for the game that I found is that the cutscenes in the game are beautiful, and for the credit of Creative and 343, they did manage to create cinematic cutscenes, drama happens, and actual next-gen looking visages of the Spirit of Fire conducting their anti-banish campaign on the Ark. The problem is that the power of the graphics for the graphics' own sake. For instance, when you see Isabel controlling the Halo ring systems, what she doing in the cutscene doesn't really mean that much since it's totally out of context. These cutscenes are mostly out of context action scenes that look amazing and epic as battles and fights, but they don't serve to drive the plot anywhere. Like this scene here. The Sentinel Swarm is attacking the Banished warship. It doesn't add anything to the storyline, we don't know the capabilities of the Banished or the Sentinels all that well, so all this creates is a spectacularly rendered explosion and nothing else. And to elaborate, it seems like the cost of making cutscenes like this weighed heavily on the budget, because the game is almost insultingly short, especially for a game made in 2017. I think it somehow manages to be shorter than the original Halo Wars, and that wasn't exactly bursting with side quests, if you get what I mean. And with most of the campaign missions in Halo Wars 2 being the destruction of Atriox's existing military structure and preventing his movements, you get the sense of who's actually the interesting character in all this malarkey. It doesn't help that the ultimate way we defeat Atriox on the Ark is something the player kind of blundered into on accident. The plan was to get the Ark's controlling stations and have its native function produce another of the lost Halo rings from the original trilogy and send it home with a distress beacon, since Halo Installation 04's original position was close enough to Earth for them to hear it. But then the Spirit of Fire has to deal with all this banished nonsense, and the two ideas are thrown together in the air, and then Creative or 343 both forgot to catch the falling scenarios. The game finishes with the banished invading the Halo ring and the player having to defend Professor Andrews while she sets up the beacon. And right here at the last mission of the game, the final deal they have to go through, is where the difficulty curve took a massive nosedive. For reasons beyond even my understanding, Creative decided to give the player automatically recurring, ridiculously strong reinforcements of actual unnecessary numbers in a strategy game, infinite resources, and a shield to protect with the health bar of Fort Knox. I spent most of the final mission just staring at idle animations. It was that easy. Just set up all the units and garrisons and get all the turrets ready. They managed to take apart every enemy that even comes close to them, and you have an additional 2 waves of goodies ready to take out any enemies that manage to break through by the skin of their teeth. It's a long mission too, so it just ends up being a whoopee cushion of an ending because it's 75% waiting for things to be interesting and then none of those things happening or caring to. Atriox isn't even defeated at the end of the game. The humans go home and Atriox and his banished are allowed to do whatever they want because Halo Wars 2 barely gave a crap to do much of anything beyond introducing the banished as a new faction in the grander universe of this franchise. Basically, Halo Wars 2 is like a spin-off in the Marvel or Star Wars film franchises. Something moderately well made to only justify its existence, mainly created to hype up and support core movies that'll be made later. It's the Ashcan Project of the second Halo trilogy, meant to introduce new enemies and show off the continuation of the core trilogy's conflict against Cortana, since the game actually has an end credits scene where one of the Guardians shows up at Anders' feet on Halo 04 just to look cool and foreboding. The problem is that Halo 5 screwed up so spectacularly that anything coming out under the name Halo 6 is automatically a fail unless it's the gaming equivalent of God himself, which it won't be because 343 Industries screws up everything they try their hand at because they take the safe committee design way out each and every time. The game is boring and uninteresting, with its main claim to fame being cutscenes that take up maybe 5% of the campaign's runtime, with most of it spent playing with recreated mechanics from a game that was not good at strategy gaming. It's not something that should have been emulated and remade, but something forgotten and replaced by something better. Sure, Creative Assembly improved upon the original formula a lot, and it certainly should be credited with that, and it's made more fun to use, yet bringing it back at all was a bad idea. Plus, the game lacks any kind of personality or ultimate goal or even a coherent story or characters to get behind. The main characters are barely in the game, and the ones that actually do things in battle are essentially faceless protagonists because they're Spartans. And since the ultimate goal of Halo Wars 2 isn't found in defeating Atriox, who is the game's antagonist, then what is the point in bothering besides defeating the game's challenges? The game has some good satisfying ones to be found, that is undeniable. And you do get catharsis from outsmarting the AI of this game, since they aren't slouches. But without that good original trilogy-style storyline to tie the great gameplay together, is it really worth your $60? I don't think so. Also, Halo Wars 2 is a Microsoft-backed game, so obviously they have a microtransaction system where you can buy trading cards to unlock new units and abilities in online play, which you also have to pay for. And I would like to meet these mystical people that you think exist, Microsoft, who are willing to pay 100 additional US dollars to buy hundreds of card packs, entitling you to over 600 cards. I don't know if there's an ability to unlock cards just by playing the multiplayer, but like I said, the game itself is boring, short, and trivial, so I doubt there's a large fan base available to even play strategy-based Magic the Gathering with. Just saying, because there's always fun to be had in slagging off the microtransactions of modern games. Let's cap this farce of a war off with the final scoreboard. And a victory for gamers. Salute! Look forward to another new series when we return next week.